I'm Davis Gandera.
I'm Justice Perkins.
And today we're here to find out, is the guest the greatest movie ever made?
I'll cut you a deal. You can take them all off my hands.
No, I'm going to kill you.
Hey, what the fuck, David?
Welcome to the greatest movie ever made, the show where we watch a movie and tell you if it's the greatest movie ever made.
R.I.P. to people listening to this podcast on 2x speed.
A movie that is so thoroughly entertaining and compelling that while you're watching it is, the rest of it. The rest of it.
You can't talk that fast for the whole podcast. It's not
No,
going to work.
it's not going to work that
You're
way.
going to stumble over all your words.
I'm Davis Gandera, joined as always by my co-host and sexy Terminator, Justice Burkett.
Yeah, Dan Stevens is... he is a hunk and a half in this movie.
He's so hot.
He's... The point of the movie is sort of how hot he is.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of, like, it's sort of like, isn't it insane that he's getting away with all of this, but it makes sense because he looks like that. Is basically the whole thing of the movie.
And he's charming and
Right.
disarmingly nice.
But also, like, very unsettling and weird.
Yeah.
He's great in this movie. His performance is great. But it's insane that he, like, is simultaneously, like, the hottest man that has ever lived. And also, his performance is, like, sort of like Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal Lecter on the Hannibal TV show, where he just has, like, dead eyes. His eyes are gorgeous. They're these gorgeous bright blue beams that capture you, but then there's, like, just, like, dead behind them.
Yeah,
Like,
this movie
great.
makes great use of Dan Stevens' eyes, and Dan
Yes.
Stevens is acting with his eyes.
Yeah, Dan Stevens...
so well.
It's nuts that his eyes look like that. Like, it's crazy
Yeah.
that those aren't contacts or that they didn't do any digital shit to his eyes. He just has those in his head, which, congrats, man. You lucked out. You won the eye lottery. But before we talk about Dan, the guest Stevens, more, how are you, David?
I'm good.
Good.
I had a good week. I've been doing a lot of thrifting recently.
That's good. That's thrifting is good because not only is it cheaper, it's also good for the environment.
Yeah, I've been spending a lot of money, though.
Well, yeah.
I probably shouldn't.
Well, then at least it's good for the environment. What you been thrifting?
Movies.
Picking up? Oh, yeah.
I've just been buying a shitload of movies. I bought
yeah.
some music.
Yeah.
I went to Bookman's the other day and grabbed a couple CDs and a record and some movies. And then I went back again today to look for more stuff, and I got a couple video games.
Yeah, I was driving through that parking lot to go to Sprouts, and I saw your car at Bookman's, and I was like, should I stop and say hey to David, like pop into Bookman's and see if I can find him in there and be like, yo, what's up? And then I was like, I'm going to see him in 2 hours.
I actually did go to Sprouts, too. I went to Sprouts after I went to Bookman's.
Yeah.
I got some allergen-free cookies for my mom.
Nice.
Because she's involved with the prison ministry at her church, which she's been involved there for years. And they go and they sit with incarcerated women, and they were doing like a rummage sale to raise money for their program. Mm. And I figured I would go see them, and I figured I'd also surprise my mom with some cookies.
That's very kind of you.
Get some cookies
What a
to
good
the other
son.
ladies. Yeah.
What a good son, bringing cookies to the is it you said it was a church event?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How nice.
Yeah. I'm nice sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm a good kid sometimes. But then I went there and I bought more movies.
Well, yeah, of course.
And a VCR, which I don't know if it works.
Okay. I'm glad you now own a VCR because I've been trying to talk the Podmaster into getting a VCR because we have one VHS. But the Podmaster and I have Silence of the Lambs on VHS and no other movies on VHS. We also have Silence of the Lambs on Blu-ray, but we found it on VHS. It's a long story. At our old post office, which was a post office for the whole town because we used to live in a tiny, tiny town outside of Flagstaff. Mm-hmm. We used to live in Munns Park. And the post office for Munns Park, like, nobody has a mailbox. You just go to the one. Anyway, it literally doesn't matter. but we picked up this VHS of Silence of the Lambs, and we can't play it, so it's display only because we don't have a VHS player. But now that you have a VHS player, if it works,
I also need to find a cable for it.
Yes. And maybe a different TV for it, depending on whether your TV will work with it. Because I've heard that some people, when they get a VHS player, have to also get a CRT TV to play VHS tapes, because the newer ones, literally, there's just no way to hook them up.
Okay.
Is what I've heard.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I have a few VHS tapes. I'm not a fan of the format. I think VHSs are bad and shitty, and it's good that we're not using them anymore.
Yes, for the novelty of it, it's sometimes fun to pop in a VHS in the 2020s.
I have like the original Star Wars trilogy on VHS.
You also have Dune on VHS.
I have
Denis Villeneuve's Dune.
I have both of his Dune movies on a bootleg VHS.
Bootleg VHS.
And then I bought the Lynch one too to complete my little Dune VHS collection.
It's very funny that you have every single Dune movie on VHS.
I still haven't bought them on Blu-ray yet either.
You only have them on VHS?
I only have them on VHS. I think in my brain, I thought like maybe someday he'll do a full 5-hour edit of them, or like I'll wait until Messiah comes out and get the really big, expensive, nice box set or whatever.
Right.
But I do just have Denis Villeneuve's Dune on VHS.
Well, then you definitely need to figure out how to get that VHS player working so that you can watch Dune without having to stream it. Just be like, oh yeah, I'll watch this on the only format I have. A format that was obsolete fucking 20 years before this movie came out.
And there are some movies that are hard to find on DVD and Blu-ray that are available on VHS, and I see them at thrift stores. So like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have anything. Actually, I do have stuff to recommend. This is the Halloween Horrorthon 2, Dead by Dawn. Yay, welcome.
Dead by Dawn.
And normally I would recommend something sort of related to the movie that we're watching. What I'll just say is Dan Stevens and Maika Monroe, two actors that are great in this movie, have also been having a really good year. And because I probably won't have an opportunity to talk about these movies on the Best of 2024 episode, Cuckoo with Dan Stevens is great, and he's amazing in it and worth seeing. He's worth seeing, like, just watch that movie just for him, really. Hunter Schafer's also great in that, too. He collaborated with Adam Wingard again in Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. I also heard he was really good in Abigail, but I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah. I've also heard that movie is bad.
Yeah.
But I have heard the same thing, which is that he's good in it.
I'll probably watch it for Dan.
Yeah.
And Maika Monroe in Longlegs, of course. Everyone was talking about Longlegs. I thought Longlegs was pretty freaking great. Overhyped? Sure. But I had a really, really good time with it, and Maika Monroe was awesome in it, as she always is. Justice, how are you doing, and is there anything that you would like to recommend?
I got heartburn, dog. It sucks. Acid reflux, do not recommend. That's not on my media recommendations list, is having acid reflux, because it is unpleasant. I don't know. I have to think. I didn't prepare like my full Horrorthon media recs list like I did last year, which was probably overkill anyway. But I have been listening, as I am wont to do, to a lot of short form horror podcasts. And I keep finding new ones because I keep burning through the entire backlog of existing ones that I'm already subscribed to. And then I just have to wait for new episodes. So while I'm waiting, I find another one and listen to the entire back catalog.
Yeah.
And I found a pretty good one, which is called Full Body Chills. And it's from a network that actually mostly produces true crime podcasts, but they have like a side show called Full Body Chills that's short form horror, and they're really bite sized, which is the thing I like about their show, because a lot of the time I like, stories that are like an hour, 90 minutes, really immersive. Like I like that stuff too, but Full Body Chills is really good for like I'm driving to the grocery store and back. Their stories are usually between like 15 and 30 minutes.
That's nice.
Yeah, so they're really digestible, really bite sized. Mostly the writing is pretty good, although even though I am recommending it, just a thing to know going into it is some of the stories do have that chronic short fiction thing where it's like we thought of a really cool ending and then we had to like figure out how to make a whole story out of it. So you get to the ending and you're like, oh yes, this was a story written for the ending, because they had an idea of an ending and just needed to figure out how to get there. So some of them have that problem, but not too many of them. And I do think like the voice acting and audio production is pretty good. So if you want to listen to something spooky while you're folding your laundry, check out Full Body Chills. It's
Cool.
good. Yeah.
All right. So we're talking about The Guest
Yes.
from 2014, directed by Adam Wingard.
Yes.
I mean, spoiler warning, obviously. I said this on the last episode. I kind of feel like this is a movie that you should go into blind.
I would agree with that, yeah.
If you're at all interested in it, check it out and then come back.
Yeah.
Again, you're not going to it's not going to ruin your day if you listen to this episode the whole way through. But
No.
I think this movie really benefits from going in as blind as possible, because this movie does not give a fuck about whatever your expectations are.
Right. And it's more that than that this movie has like a big Shyamalan-esque twist. There's not really like a twist in this movie in the way that Shyamalan does it, where it's like you think the movie is one thing and then there's like a huge pivot and it's like, whoa, now out of left field, the movie is something else. Instead, this movie basically is just like, what movie do you think you're watching? Scene to scene, you know? And so it, instead of taking a big sharp turn, it's just kind of like weaving in and out of genres and of, it's just like dancing around your expectations the entire time, which is very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched this a few years ago without any expectations other than I knew Dan Stevens was in it and Maika Monroe. And I enjoyed it, but I think I liked it even more this time around. And part of it is because I like Dan Stevens and Maika Monroe now. Like, Maika Monroe is great in It Follows. I've wanted to see her do more things, but they just haven't gotten the attention that they probably should have.
Yeah. I think It Follows is the only thing I've seen Maika Monroe in.
Okay.
Other than this movie, damn it.
And I had previously seen Dan Stevens in the FX show Legion, which is an X-Men... It's like an X-Men based superhero show.
Yeah.
That is the showrunner's Noah Hawley, who did Fargo. And it is probably the most underrated Marvel property that I've ever seen. And it is awesome. I've only seen the first season, and the first season's one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Hell yeah.
But Dan Stevens is great in that. Dan Stevens also a man of many accents. I don't know that I've heard this man use his natural accent in anything.
So Dan Stevens is actually British.
Yes.
You do hear him use his real accent if you see Downton Abbey.
Yeah, he's in Downton Abbey.
He's Matthew Crawley, cousin Matthew. Yes,
and he's I guess he's the Beast in the Beauty and the Beast remake with Emma
weird.
Watson. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know what accent he's using in that, but as far as like the most high profile thing he's done,
he's probably putting a little bit more polish than he naturally has on his British accent in Downton Abbey. But like when you watch Downton Abbey and then you watch interviews with him, it's more or less how he talks.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Downton Abbey, R.I.P. Dame Maggie Smith.
Holy shit!
Just because I mentioned Downton Abbey the day after she sadly passed.
Yeah,
what a loss. I mean, I know she was very old, but it's like it's still never easy.
She much
losing
like
someone like that.
Much like her contemporary and close friend Dame Judi Dench.
Yeah,
they both just seem like they're gonna live forever.
Right.
So it's hard to see her go.
It's sad to lose him, and man, what a fucking talent. Anyway. But yeah, so Dan Stevens is, I actually knew him best from Downton Abbey for quite a while. Basically until he started popping up in stuff like Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities and whatnot.
Yeah, and he's doing a goofy accent.
Right, yes. But in this movie, his accent is not he is my name's David Collins and I am an American man, and sometimes I kind of have a southern drawl, but sometimes I don't.
I turn on the southern drawl when I'm trying to turn up the charm, and I say yes ma'am and no ma'am and yes sir and no sir.
His accent is fucking insane in this movie. I love Dan Stevens. I think he's a great actor. I think his performance in this movie is really good. This man does not sound convincingly American at all in this movie. I think. I was like, you sound like an alien who was taught how to speak English by like a mixture of like army recruitment commercials and furniture store ads from Alabama or some shit. Like,
I think it works for the character, though.
Yeah.
Like having a slightly off.
Right, because it's like you
Southern
never
drawl.
really know what his deal is.
Yeah.
He's a government experiment of some kind, but there's no specifics around it. So it's like, yeah, maybe they just fucked with his brain and he talks like that now. But yeah, it is pretty the accent is a little off. Which works for the character, but was also making me laugh.
Yeah, it was making me laugh too because I think this movie is really fucking funny.
Yeah,
and so much of it boils down to Dan Stevens' performance and just the man can just turn on a dime in this movie.
Yeah,
and it's so fun to watch
in a way that is like this is a big showy performance in its own way. It's quiet. It's a quiet and like reined in performance in terms of like he's not going super loud vocally or big physically.
He's not chewing the scenery or anything.
But it's also
like,
a very showy performance because he's what he's doing is not subtle. And it works for the movie because the movie's not subtle. This is not a subtle movie. But you say he can turn on a dime, and it's like, yes, he absolutely can. And he turns big on a dime. It's not like micro expressions. These are macro expressions. And it's really effective. It's like very fun to watch. Like when he's talking to Luke, when Luke has figured out his whole thing, and his face just goes fucking fully dead while he's talking to this kid in the hallway, and you're just expecting him to like grab this kid by the throat and shove him up against the locker and like break his neck. Because he goes from like smiling like warm Dan Stevens to just fucking full on serial killer in like 1 second, which is great.
Yeah. And Maika Monroe is also great in this too.
Yeah.
I think of the movies that I've seen her in, It Follows, Longlegs, and this might be my least favorite of her performances, but she's so good and immediately likable in everything I've seen her in.
Yeah.
That whenever she comes on screen, I'm just like, oh, I like her. I'm on her side. I empathize with this character a lot.
Yeah, I think I like her better in It Follows. And I think it's just more because that movie, the tone is very serious and that movie's not supposed to be like campy, silly, fun necessarily. This movie is much campier and sillier than It Follows. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I think she can and does work with the campy, silly tone, but I feel like my preferred mode for her is in something that's a little bit more like dark, like It Follows.
Well, this movie takes a while to get going, and it takes a while to figure out what kind of movie this is.
Yeah. Although the Podmaster, to her credit, she watched the first half of this with me and then fell asleep because she's very tired. And she was enjoying it. She clocked it literally right away. Basically, the movie opens. First of all, great title font. That must be acknowledged.
It's John Carpenter font.
Yes.
And you know what kind of movie you're watching at the very least.
Yeah,
like that.
I think it's like maybe slightly tweaked John Carpenter font.
Uh-huh.
But anyway. And also it's blue.
Yeah, it is blue.
But then basically like the first thing that happens is you're like in this house with this family, and this dad and kid leave and are like, bye mom, bye honey, whatever. And dad and son leave, and like the mom is just sitting there catatonic looking at pictures of her son in like military fatigues, and the Podmaster started laughing at the top of her lungs at just this shot of this mother staring catatonic in this chair. And I was like, what? And she was like, this is so silly. And I was like, I don't get it. And then she was right. She clocked the tone of the movie like from like the third shot.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Where she was like, it's like they're making fun of it. She basically was like, it's like they're parodying like a Lifetime thriller movie. And she's 100% correct.
Yeah. So I know a little bit about the behind the scenes on this. This is directed by Adam Wingard and written by Simon Barrett. They've collaborated on a lot of things. Before this, they had done the movie You're Next, which I haven't seen, but
me either.
Their concept behind it was like their version of a home invasion movie, like their kind of send up of home invasion thrillers. And this started as like 2 separate scripts that they eventually merged together, where one of them was like a serious drama about a family that had lost their son in war, and this guy comes home, and then the other one was more of like a Terminator script.
Yes.
So their concept actually for this movie is Halloween 3 Season of the Witch mashed up with the Terminator.
Yes. So it's like that's the tone they're going for.
Yeah.
And it was just so incredible to me that the Podmaster clocked the tone.
Yeah.
Like from the jump, from not Jennifer Connelly staring off into space.
Yeah, not Jennifer
That every single time I put anything about the mom in my notes, she's in my notes as not Jennifer Connelly, because it is abundantly clear that whoever cast this movie wanted Jennifer Connelly in that role, and they just found the closest looking person. The closest looking person, maybe not the closest in terms of performance ability, because I do think the mom in this movie is kind of bad.
I think, but again, I think the can't be toned with this thing. Right. It is like the mom and the dad both are just terrible, and you're not sad when they die, and the movie knows that.
I'm gonna spend, I don't know if it's going to be now or later, and we can put a pin in it, but at some point during this podcast, I'm going to talk for 20 continuous minutes about the dad.
I'm going to have a beer, Justice. Can I get you anything? I'm going to have a beer.
I'm making a drink, honey.
We can just talk about him now.
Okay.
So it's the guy from Seven that wears the bondage knife outfit.
Yes, yeah.
And
I fucked her.
He's also the guy in Alien Resurrection that decides to go on the adventure, even though he knows he's fully been face-huggered and impregnated.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's just a matter of time before a fucking chest burster jumps out of his chest.
Yeah.
But he's just gonna tag along with everyone else, and his performance of that is also like very sweaty and manic, just like Seven.
and he the dad in this movie is fucking hilarious. This guy had me losing my shit multiple times. Not the least of which is fucking Dan Stevens shows up. First of all, I like that this movie gets off to the races immediately. Mm-hmm. Like, basically the first thing that happens in the movie is knock, knock, knock. Dan Stevens, hello, I am the titular guest, right? But, so he has showed up, and fucking the dad is offering Dan Stevens a beer. And then we, cut to later in the evening, and there's 4 empties on the table in front of him, and he just starts bitching about work. He's just like, yeah, this fucking college boy got the regional manager promotion. What the fuck's that about? Am I right, guy I just met? And then he's like, can I get you another beer? And the fucking camera switches angles, and so you've been looking at one side of the room, and now you're looking from another direction, and you can see the side table next to him, and there's 3 more empties on the side. And he's like, man, you can really put him away. And Dan Stevens looks at the beer, which is clearly still his first, and is like, yeah, I guess so. So this guy's just fucking killing 2 6-packs with this guy who was friends with his dead son. And being like, one of these days, fucking, I'll edge out Barry on that promotion. It rules.
Yeah,
it's so good.
The mom and the dad are both spineless, weak little morons.
Oh man. My other favorite moment with the dad is when he finds out that the guy who got the promotion has died horribly.
Yeah.
And he just
comes home and just pours a glass of tequila or
but
something.
First, he comes through the door. He has a briefcase. He throws his briefcase into the living room. He just chucks it. And then he beelines it to the fucking liquor cabinet. And he said, and his wife is like, what happened? Are you okay? And he says, I need a drink. And she starts talking to him more. And he says, I said I need It's so fucking good. And then he just stands there in the kitchen fucking sipping this like tequila or whatever and being like, yeah, anyway, my a guy who passed me up for a promotion was found dead next to his girlfriend, so I guess I have his job now.
Hey, Dan Stevens, mysterious stranger who showed up at our doors and has knowledge about how to kill people in the military. Would you like a drink while I talk about my dead boss?
Yeah. and Dan Stevens just fucking totally stone-faced is like, yeah, sure. It's so good. Anyway, that's most of the dad in this movie. But yeah, so like Dan Stevens shows up, and initially it's just like him and the mom, and he's basically like, hi, I was friends with your son, and your son who has died, right? Because that's like the very first thing we learned in this movie is that they had a son in the army who died. And he's like, I'm friends with your son. He wanted me to come here and tell you all that he loves you or whatever. And he's like, I first of all, I ran here. She's like, how did you get here? And he's like, I ran. And then second of all, yeah, I'll just, now that I've dropped by, I'll just go back to the Motel 6. And she's immediately like, no, stay, please stay. Which is, it's a recurring thing in this movie where like everything that happens to all of these people at the hands of Dan Stevens is like their fault.
Absolutely.
Because everybody is like, no, fucking hang out for a while. Yeah, come to the party with me. Like
he definitely is meddling in these people's lives.
Yeah.
But he's not forcing himself on them. He's not being, overly creepy or pushy or anything. He's just being very nice, very humble, just like, no, that's okay. I'll go to the hotel. And then the fucking dumbass mom is like, no, stay for dinner. In fact, stay overnight. And it's just that over and over again.
I fully believe that if she had been like, okay, well, enjoy your night at the Motel 6, he would have just gone there and sat on the edge of the Motel 6 bed and stared off into space and not have bothered these people. I truly think he's like a vampire. He has to be invited in. Is sort of the vibe of like how his character's like internal logic works.
Well, and again, like he is the Terminator too.
Right.
Where when he's like sitting motionless and still, it's like he's not expending any energy that he doesn't need to.
Yeah.
And I also feel like while he does accept drinks a couple of times in this movie, he never he only has really one or something like that.
Yeah, that fucking horrible drink he orders at the bar, he takes one sip of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another thing too, where it's like he needs his senses to be honed and sharpened at all times.
Yes. So yeah, then so he's like bonding with the mom basically right away. And she's very clearly, it's like, oh, you were my son's friend, now you are kind of like my surrogate son, like I'm just gonna replace, like she's just projecting all of her shit on him, it seems like. Although it also seems like at multiple points in this movie she also wants to fuck him.
Yeah.
Especially when they're hanging up that laundry. I think if those government guys didn't show up, they would be he would be clapping those cheeks in the front yard in like 8 minutes if those government guys didn't show up, because she is giving him fuck eyes in that scene. But yeah, so like they bond right away, and we then like the rest of the family like meets him, and we like see his sort of dynamics start to form with each of them.
I like when his dad comes home, or when the dad comes home for the first time, and they're having the conversation in the hallway about like, are we gonna let this guy stay or not? And he goes, "What if he has a PTSD?" That was very funny.
The writing in this movie, by the way, is a lot of like shit like that, which is clearly intentional and very good. Like it's very clear that they are writing like campy dialogue on purpose, and it fucking hits every time. One of my favorites is when Zeke gets arrested and he calls Maika Monroe, and because Zeke's like her boyfriend, he calls Maika Monroe, and there's a like shot of him on his call in the prison, and then it like cuts to a shot of her on the phone at home, and she says, what do you mean they found the gun in the back of your trunk and now they think you did it? Like, it is like fully that thing in movies where like the person on the other end of the call just repeats the entire thing the other person just said for the audience's benefit and for no other reason. It got a huge laugh out of me. It was so funny.
There's another great line from the dad that's in that same vein where after Zeke gets arrested and she's like, he's still my boyfriend. We never broke up. And and the dad says something to the effect of like, well, he's a pot dealer, so who knows what he could have done. So maybe he did murder them or something, like taking this huge jump in logic.
Yes, yeah. This is one of the things that had me thinking Lifetime movie with this, right? Is like that just feels like it would be totally at home in like a Lifetime original, being like, well, the guy who deals pot obviously also murders multiple people. Clearly. That's how the rules of this universe work. Yeah.
Yeah, he's David, played by Dan Stevens.
Yes.
David in quotes.
Quote David end quote. Which when you pause it on when you're watching it on Amazon, it gives you like the actor and their character credit when and it says Dan Stevens quote David unquote. And I was like, that's sort of a spoiler just in the credits.
Yeah. So he's starting to get along with the rest of the family. We haven't talked about the son yet, named Luke, who's dealing with bullies at school.
They literally push him into a locker.
Yeah.
Like it is the most on the nose depiction of bullying.
And they're bullies that look like adults too.
Yes. Yeah. While we were watching that scene, the podmaster was like, what high school have people been pushed into lockers at? Like, has that ever actually happened? Because everyone that we've ever talked to about it, like, is like, no, that there wasn't bullying like that at my high school. And my conclusion is, I don't think it ever really existed.
I pushed a kid into a locker once.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh shit! You were the bully pushing kids into lockers?
There was this. I can't remember this kid's name. Not that I would have said it on the podcast. I don't know.
Dox him. His life has been too good. He's been pushed into lockers.
When I was in middle school, there was this short little kid that annoyed the shit out of me while also trying to like sort of pretending to be my friend.
Yeah.
And
we all had one of those.
I think his locker was right next to mine.
Yeah.
And he would always give me shit. And then one day, my locker was on the bottom row. So I was like down on my knees, opening the locker and doing something. And he like came up behind me and started doing something, or I thought I heard him say something. And I turned around and just shoved him into the locker. And he looked like legitimately shocked by it.
Yeah, because nobody fucking does that. It's just
I guess
a
not.
thing for movies.
I guess not. Yeah, that's what I did.
I stand corrected. Apparently, it has happened in real life, and you are the bully.
But not like the full bully, like pick you up by your collar and shove you into the locker and call you a slur.
Right, and also if he's giving you shit first, I feel like that's different than how the shoving into lockers in movies usually works, because usually that kid is minding his own business, not bothering anybody, and the bullies are like "fuck you" for no reason, which that was not.
Yeah.
You weren't doing that to kids.
Yeah, I did feel bad immediately afterwards.
Well, yeah.
But
that's just because you're not a sociopath like these football players in this movie are. Yeah, he gets bullied.
He gets bullied. Dan Stevens picks him up. So the next big thing that happens is Dan Stevens.
You know what? In this movie, Dan Stevens more like Damn Stevens.
Yeah.
Break me off a piece of that. You know what I'm saying?
A piece of that Stevens. Dan Stevens picks him up from school and takes him to a bar where the high school kids have gone in somehow. They were just let in to go drink.
So Dan Stevens is driving the kid Luke to follow this car, and he sees that they're turning into a parking lot of a bar where the sign just says bar, which, based on how small of a town this is supposed to be like a tiny rural town in New Mexico. The bar sign that just said bar, I was like, yes, accurate. That is not a silly, like, half-assed movie thing. Those really exist.
Yeah.
But
The other thing we should mention about the setting, because you might be wondering why we're covering this for Halloween, because this is not really a horror movie.
No, this is a full-on thriller.
Yeah, it's
like this movie has one genre and it is thriller.
Yeah. This movie takes place during Halloween.
Yeah.
And it is clearly like an homage to Season of the Witch.
Yes.
To the point where they even have the
masks.
The masks in the Halloween dance.
Yes, which I was like fucking pounding the armrest of my couch, being like, "Let's fucking go!" Halloween 3 mentioned. Because I didn't know the stuff that you mentioned about them like intentionally using that as an influence. But yeah, so it is very Halloween-y. It does get you in the spooky season spirit. So it was a good pick. But yeah, so the high schoolers are turning into this parking lot for this bar, and Dan Stevens is like, they're going to a bar, and Luke is like, yeah, they serve you if you're underage as long as you're on the football team, because that's the kind of town this is, right?
Yeah.
So like that's the thing. They pull into the parking lot, and I love Dan Stevens being like, I want a drink. You want one? And the kid being like, no, what the fuck?
I'm 15 or whatever.
Also, I'm not on the football team. And he's like, okay, well, I'm getting a drink. You can wait here. And he just walks into the bar. And I fucking love that the next shot is like Luke walking into the bar because he's gotten tired of waiting in the car or whatever. He walks through the doors and Dan Stevens is sitting at this bar table like this. Like he's sitting with his like arms just like pressed on the table directly in front of him, like the Terminator. He's just sitting like a robot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we have no idea how much time has passed since Dan Stevens went into the bar and told Luke to just wait for him, and when Luke entered and saw him like this. But I imagine it's been a while, and he's been sitting like that the whole time.
And he also hasn't ordered a drink yet.
No, there's nothing on the table. And he's just like... So Luke comes and sits down, and the fucking bartender comes up and is like, hey, like, I'm gonna need to see some ID for this obvious child. And Dan Stevens is like, oh, you checked their IDs about the football players? And the guy's like, touche, what do you want? And he orders the most insane fucking drink I've literally ever heard of.
He asked, doesn't he? He asks for a fireball.
He asks, do you know how to make a fireball? Like,
okay.
Fireball is the name of the cocktail.
Okay. Because my brain went to Fireball whiskey.
Yeah. He asks, do you know how to make a fireball? And the guy says, yes, cinnamon schnapps and Tabasco sauce. And I, like... It sounds fucking repulsive.
I think I would drink it.
This isn't really a would we eat this because this is a beverage, but... I don't think I would.
I think I'd give it a try.
I mean, I'd take one sip, but it's gonna be bad.
But it's also clear that I think he orders it to take one and takes one sip of it. The primary reason he orders it is
as a weapon.
Is as a weapon because he knows the bullies are gonna come over after he orders their girlfriend's blowjob shots and the guy's cosmopolitans.
Yes, which is very much like he has clocked how homophobic this group obviously is. And is basically just like, yeah, blowjob shots for the ladies and Cosmos for the guys. And the football player comes over and throws the fucking Cosmo in his face. And he throws the fucking fireball in this guy's face. And it's like he got pepper sprayed because that's just eyes full of Tabasco and cinnamon schnapps. And then he... lays out 4 high schoolers, which is awesome.
Yeah, he beats the shit out of these kids. He breaks a kid's ankle.
Yeah, that kid can kiss his fucking football scholarship goodbye.
Oh, yeah.
He is no longer going to a Division I school. I don't think that kid is going to college anymore. Without that scholarship, he's going straight to the factory floor.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to be working at at the slaughterhouse.
You're going to be taking shop next year instead of football.
Yeah. That the ankle break is fucking nuts. He smashes a bottle across one of their faces. Luke gets punched in the face here too, which is very funny because he literally did nothing.
Luke kind of deserves it.
Does he?
I think Luke's I think Luke's just a punchable little shit in this movie.
Well, okay. So first of all, he does look like Link from Red and Link, circa 2007, but aged slightly down. He also looks a little bit like the one guy from Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah.
But like younger. So what I'm saying is he looks like a dork with like a mop top. And no offense to either of those very funny gentlemen that I just mentioned. But there's a reason that neither of them have that haircut anymore.
I just kind of think Luke sucks, and I sort of wish he got killed.
I mean, if it was more Halloween 3 with it, then he should, because the kids fucking eat shit in Halloween 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have like a lot of bloodlust around Luke in terms of like teen characters in movies. I found him pretty tolerable. But
I think the performance is good.
Yeah.
The performance is good.
But I'm not gonna disagree with you that he should have died, because I
feel like
just always think everyone should die in every violent movie.
Yeah. I think writing wise, he's sort of in the same level as like the mom and the dad,
Right.
where you're supposed to not really like them that much.
Yeah.
And that's why I think Maika Monroe works so well in this very cheesy movie, because she's like the grounded character that we can like root for and rally behind.
Yeah.
And is kind of the straight man in this film full of very colorful and interesting cheesy characters.
And also she is like super into like goth music and shit.
Yeah, she's like
The Bauhaus baddie.
goth synthwave GF.
Yeah. But yeah, so he fucking lays all these dudes out. They go back home, and Luke has a fucking bloody tissue stuck up his nose from getting punched in the fucking face. Oh, by the way, before they leave the bar, Dan Stevens like threatens the bartender.
Yeah.
He's basically like, so basically I'm gonna leave, and you're gonna not tell anybody that I beat up these high schoolers, or else I'm gonna say that you've been serving underage kids. Peace. And
the
drops $200 on the table.
Yeah, the bartender and everyone else on the bar look like they're ready to square up and fight him.
Which I would not. I
No.
would be fucking out of there.
No.
The football guys' girlfriends, like they all run away screaming, and it's like that's what I would do if I saw this guy Jason Bourne for high schoolers. I would just be like, okay, you know what? I'm sober enough to drive home. But I also like that when he's ordering the drinks, he lays down $200 bills and is like, keep the change. And the guy's like, all right. And Luke's like, are you rich? And he says, money is easy to come by, which is a gigantic red flag. Because that means he is killing people and stealing from them. There is nothing else that could possibly mean. Or he's, because he looks like that. Maybe he's just doing the full Monty. Maybe he's doing a very, very successful male stripper.
Is he doing I think is like the male stripper thing his primary career
outside
and the assassin? Maybe that's what he really aspires to be after.
It's his artistic passion.
Yeah.
After his back injury and Jason Bournification in the army.
Yeah.
He just wants to
Now
dance.
I want to dance. I don't want to kill anymore.
But unfortunately, I'm on the run from...
I just want my looks to kill.
Vague government organization. Yeah, so they come back home. I like the bloody tissue in Luke's nose. And the mom being like, what happened? And Dan Stevens being like, don't worry about it. He got in a fight. And she's like, okay.
Yeah.
It's the degree to which this woman is fully okay with a stranger just taking over parenting her teenage son is hilarious. It's so funny.
The scene of the principal's office
oh my god
is so good,
where she just sits there kind of impotently, and he's basically like, I'm threatening to sue your ass if you expel him.
And he's like, our lawyers are ready to sue, and
Yeah.
she just kind of looks at him like, what do you mean our lawyers?
Are we married now? But yeah,
I think the next big thing here is he goes to the party with Maika Monroe.
Yeah,
and
because the mom is basically like, we have to repay him somehow. Take him to your party, daughter, whose name I don't remember.
Anna.
And
I like and so Maika Monroe's been kind of, she's a little bit older. She's in her 20s.
Yeah, she's exactly 20. We know because there is a very pointed line where she's asks for a drink, and her dad's like, "Not a chance," and she's like, "I turned 21 in 1 month."
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, yes, thank you for explicitly letting us know how old this character is. So it's not weird when grown-ass Dan Stevens is like inches away from sealing the deal with her.
Yeah. She's a lot more skeptical and like standoffish around him. So she comes out and she's like, David, would you like to go to the party with me tonight? It's just a great delivery.
Yeah.
And
then his delivery, his response is very good too.
Yeah.
Where he's like, why, yes, I would, or whatever. And he says it like just so like earnestly, and like he's just like a little Boy Scout being like, well, gee willikers, ma'am.
And then they have a little awkward encounter in the bathroom with his shirt off.
So first of all, Dan Stevens, he's very hot in this movie, but also he's fucking stacked. Like he's yoked in this movie. He's looking really good. And he comes out of the shower with the towel like pretty low on his waist, so you can see like his fucking taper V. It's like almost to the top of his cock with how low this towel is. And he opens the door and she's like, oh, sorry, I thought it was my brother in there. And he's like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. And she's just like staring at him like, and he leaves, and she goes into the bathroom, shuts the door, and then like is like up against the door being like humana. She is like rendered borderline catatonic with horniness.
I'm gonna turn on the fan and start jerking off and hope no one hears me.
Yeah, it's basically like he opens that door and it's like sploosh. Yeah.
Which fair, because he is jacked in this movie, but he's also kind of got a sleeper build.
Yeah.
Like you don't really see it coming.
No, he's covering it very well with those baseball tees that he's wearing a lot in this movie.
Yeah.
Where it's like you can sort of tell that his biceps are built and you can see his like big forearms, but you don't really like get a lot else. And then once that baseball tee's off, it's like, holy shit. Yeah. Which is very much her reaction. So they go to the party.
Yeah, this party scene, this movie's an hour and 40.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like we could lose a little bit of fat here, and this party scene feels like an area where that's possible.
I think this party scene is maybe my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't know what you would cut here, because I love that they show up, and like, so Maika Monroe's basically like, by the way, my boyfriend's going to be here. Don't tell my parents about my boyfriend. And he's like, oh yeah, sure. And they open the door and we meet Anna's friend, whose name I don't remember, and it doesn't matter. But she sees Dan Stevens and is also, it is sploosh number 2.
Yeah.
Right? She opens the door and is basically like, I would like you inside me immediately, guy I just met. And then they like go into the party. Or Maika Monroe goes into the party, and Dan Stevens is immediately like, hey, like, where are those kegs that need to be brought in? Maika Monroe goes and is like sitting with all her friends, and fucking Dan Stevens comes in holding one keg like down by his side with one arm, and has another one slung over his shoulder, and he goes, where do you want these? And everyone in the party like stops dead and like turns and looks at him like, huh?
Yeah, that part's pretty rad, actually. I do like that a lot.
It is the most alpha thing that anyone has ever done in a movie. And also it's like, that's the joke, and it fucking rocks.
Yeah.
It's so good. And then they're smoking a joint, and he passes it to Anna to show her that he's like cool or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then like the next big thing at the party is Dan Stevens is talking to Anna's friend, and her ex-boyfriend shows up at the party and like starts giving her shit, being like, what, you just don't talk to me for a week and now you're like throwing this party? And he like the ex-boyfriend reaches and grabs her, and Dan Stevens grabs his arm and like fucking twists it and gets him off her, and then just grabs the side of his head and smashes it into a picture on the wall. And this guy falls down potentially dead, at least unconscious. And Dan Stevens is like, get him out of here. And Anna's friend is immediately like, that's the hottest thing I've ever seen, is you physically assault my ex-boyfriend.
Would you like to see the rest of the house, particularly this back bedroom where we can fuck?
Would you like to see the rest of the house? And by the house, I mean my body.
Well, I like when they start having sex, because she's like, "Are you not into this?" And he's like, "Oh, sorry."
Right.
And then immediately like flips her over and starts being a little bit more dominant.
Yes.
It is like he's an alien having sex with someone and then realizes, "Oh, this is how you're supposed to have sex."
Yes, it's literally like, again, like he's the Terminator, and she's like, "Are you not into this?" And the options fucking pop up on his POV, like, no, maybe we should take this slow. No, yes, I'm into this, absolutely, baby. Or, no, yeah, I'm really into this. And it's like,
"Oh, you're right. I am a human having sex with you."
ah, yes, I am a human aroused by sexual intercourse with a female. Yeah. And so they just fuck, and then they go back to the party.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, "Oh, hey, like, where have you two been?" And he like sits down, and she like sits on his lap. Which is it's very funny that like this whole thing happens, and then they basically like never see each other again until he throws 2 grenades and blows her up. Spoiler alert.
Shoots her in the chest and then blows her up.
That's true, yes. With two grenades. This movie's insane. My other favorite thing that he does at this party. So the girls like get up to like go get more drinks or whatever. And it's just him and this guy Craig, who's like one of Anna's friends, who's like a drug dealer, and kind of like it's clear that this guy is not planning on going to college. Like these are all kind of 20-somethings from this little New Mexico town. Mm-hmm. And this guy's plans are to sell drugs for the foreseeable future. Like he's that type of dude. And immediately Dan Stevens is like, "Can you get me a gun?" And I love that Craig is kind of like, he has one moment of like sort of taken aback, and then he's like, yeah, I can get you a gun, sure. Why do you need a gun? And he's like, "I'm a soldier. Soldiers like guns." And he's like, yeah, hell yeah, dog. Like, I'll hook you up. I got a gun guy. And then like there's this whole moment with him it's before the girls leave, the moment with him and Craig where Craig is like, I just want to say, like, I really respect you guys.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, the troops, like I support you guys." And Dan Stevens goes full on serial killer cold, just like Stonewall, and he's like, "Yeah, but like you don't support us enough to enlist." And Craig's like, I have asthma. I have flat feet. They don't want me over there.
I'm just fucking with you.
Yeah. But it was so funny to me because over the course of my life, I have been friends with lots of military guys. I've had a lot of friends take the military path. And I've literally seen my homies who have served do this shit to guys who come up to them in bars. Because every once in a while, like I've been at a bar with a friend who's done like a combat tour or something, and they're like wearing like an army hat or something, and like people, especially in small town deep red America, see that as an invitation to come up to that person and like congratulate them on doing such a noble thing. And one friend in particular who did multiple combat tours in Afghanistan, who I knew, fucking hated that shit because he didn't like the experience of doing combat tours in Afghanistan, unsurprisingly.
Yeah.
And didn't enjoy being reminded about it while he was trying to have a drink at a bar. And so anytime someone would come up to him and be like, "Thank you for your service," or whatever, thank you for your service, he was usually like, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah.
Right? But if they did what Craig does, where they're like, "I just want you to know, I really support you guys," right? He would do the thing that David does in this movie. And as funny as it is in the movie, it is approximately 12 times funnier when you see it happen in real life, because guys fucking shit themselves when someone responds to them that way. They're like, wait, no, I didn't mean I should be in the military. I mean somebody else like you should. The other thing that was always fun hanging out with that particular old friend of mine is every once in a while you'd get someone really drunk coming up to him and being like, "Hey, while you were over there, did you kill anyone?" And he usually would do one of two things. Either say, have you? Right? Or he would say, "You really don't want to ask me that." And that one always, like, basically the only response that ever got was like, "I'm so sorry." Because it's like, what do you say? Anyway, funny moment.
Yeah. I think there's some fun moments at the party. I just think it drags on a hair too long, and we could lose a little bit here. They leave the party. David drives Anna home, and they're listening to music, and he's like, "This is a really good song," and she's like, "Oh, okay. I didn't know you like this kind of music. I'll make you a mix CD."
Yeah, and she also just unloads. He asks her like 2 questions about her ex-boyfriend, basically being or her current boyfriend.
Yeah.
And she just goes off. I love that. Like almost the first thing she says is, at first it was really cool that he was in a band. Also, her boyfriend's name is Zeke, which 2 observations about that. 1, I have never encountered a real life person named Zeke. To me, that name only exists in fiction. Like, I don't think I've ever seen an actual flesh and blood Zeke.
I've met a Zeke.
Okay.
And
Man, you're pushing kids into lockers. You're meeting Zekes. What kind of fucking
an interesting school experience.
90s high school movie did you live in growing up?
The Zeke I knew was not not at all like a redneck stereotype. He was a very large, very kind, very well liked person.
Good Zeke, yeah. But I feel like
a theater kid.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's never a bad thing.
Yeah.
Theater kids are famously universally not annoying and great people. But in movies, I always feel like Zekes, this is my second observation, are fucking trash. Anytime there's a Zeke in a movie, I'm like, oh, fucking Zeke. This guy sucks. Just by virtue of the name. There's a real grade A trash high schooler named Zeke in the movie The Faculty. Heavy recommend. Also a drug dealer, much like the Zeke in this movie. Just
I don't know if I'd buy drugs from a guy named Zeke, though.
Zeke, yeah. I feel like whatever you're getting from Zeke is not good shit.
No, he's cutting that with something.
Yeah, Zeke is not a reputable businessman. But yeah, so she's like fully bitching about Zeke, and then the mix CD thing happens, and this is where it seems like the thing that the movie is going to do is have this be like a sexual thriller, some kind of romance thriller with David and Anna. It seems like what it's setting it up for with the shower scene, and then this. You're like, oh, she's gonna like fall in love with this guy, and he's like secretly like a sociopathic serial killer, and then the movie just doesn't do that.
Yeah,
which is great.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Basically, immediately after this, Maika Monroe is suspicious of Dan Stevens, and the romance and any hints of a romance or sexual tension basically never comes up again.
Yeah, because pretty much immediately after this, she like stays up all night making the mix CD, and then like puts it on the kitchen counter or whatever for him to find. But while she's doing that, she overhears the most insane sounding conversation that he's having on the phone right outside. He's saying things like something about how like fingerprints, and then at one point she overhears him say, "I just need a new face," which it's like that's not even a red flag. We're beyond red flag territory. It's like either this guy is literally a learning computer bionic skeleton wearing human flesh who has time traveled, or he's a fucking government super soldier.
And anyone who's ever heard the sentence, I just need a new face. That person is either now dead and killed by that person, and they are wearing their face.
Yeah.
Or they are a character in the film Face Off.
I also was thinking about Face Off when he said that. I was like, oh, it would be really interesting if this movie just ended up being a thing where like he does get a new face, and then just some other actor is David for the rest of the movie, which would probably be worse because Dan Stevens is so good in this. But it'd be funny if it just changed actors partway through the movie.
The fans of this movie have been asking for a sequel.
Yeah,
and basically, and Wingard and Simon Barrett have both been like, there's nothing we can do with a guest too. Like the mystery's ruined.
Yeah.
Although Steve Moore, who did the score to this movie, which is fucking fantastic, by the way.
Yeah, really good Carpenter-esque, very clearly intentional homage to Carpenter. Banger of a score. Really
They did put out a Guest 2 soundtrack
Fuck
for like
yeah.
a fictional movie that doesn't exist, but I think it could do a Guest 2 with just someone else.
Right, just cast somebody else, and it's the same guy.
He's just got a new face.
He has a new face. And basically what you could do is more or less the same thing again. He shows up in some unassuming family or person's life and, like, weasels his way in and fucks everything up. Like, you could pretty much do the same thing again, but with a new actor, and that would make it very interesting. Because it would be like, oh, yeah, what is, I don't know, fucking Oscar Isaac's take on... on David.
My thought was you do a crossover movie with M. Night Shyamalan, and you do a Trap sequel with Josh Hartnett and Dan Stevens facing off against each other.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. I was like, Oscar Isaac is too big of a name. The Guest 2 can't afford Oscar Isaac. I was trying to think who else would be in there. I don't know. No. I haven't seen Trap, but I am aware that Josh Hartnett is also a stone cold sociopath in that, just from the memes.
And also very hot.
Yes, yeah. Anyway, so immediately Anna is suspicious after hearing the most insane phone call of all time.
She calls the army base that...
She calls the army and is like, hello, army. Can you tell me... Can you tell me about this random guy who wandered into my parents' home and now lives here? And they're like, yeah, sure, we'll give you a call back. Let me look him up.
And the lady who looks him up on the computer, an alert pops up that's basically like, restricted, access denied, call Lance Reddick immediately.
Yes. And so we do. And oh my God, Lance Reddick is so fucking good in this movie. He's so good in everything. R.I.P. by the way.
Yeah.
But like, anytime he's on screen, I'm just like, this is my favorite guy who has ever existed. He is mostly just doing his Lance Reddick thing, where he is very stern and very like precise and controlled, but then like has little outbursts every now and again, which are fucking masterful. And also he is costumed so well in this movie, where initially he's just wearing like government guy suit or whatever, but when they show up on the ground in New Mexico with the strike team, he's wearing a huge bulletproof vest and like tactical pants and a giant leather trench coat, and oh my God, he looks so good.
His tactical gear as he's like shooting his machine gun is so cool.
It's literally the coolest anybody's ever looked. It elevates this movie 1 full star in my star rating that Lance Reddick is in this movie just doing this, because he fucking rules in this movie.
And it also rocks that we get very little introduction or backstory or exposition to what's going on with this government agency, what's going on with David.
Yeah.
The setup and stuff with Lance Reddick before he shows up in New Mexico for the shootout scene is all basically just like, hey, one of our assets has gone haywire.
Right.
We got to track him down.
The movie is basically saying to you, you audience member have seen a Bourne movie before. This is that.
Yeah.
On with the movie.
And even when he's in the car with Maika Monroe and is telling her about him, it's like 2 sentences worth.
Yes.
And then the movie's just like, oh, but it doesn't matter, forget about it, we're moving on.
The exposition that he gives her is also more or less, hey, you know the Bourne movies? Yeah, this guy's Jason Bourne. It's basically like that. Like, he doesn't say that, but basically the thing is, oh yeah, we did like experiments on him and made him like a super soldier, and now he's gone rogue.
Yeah.
Right? And that's all you know.
Yeah. And then Maika Monroe eventually discovers that maybe he, got a plastic surgeon to work on his face.
Yeah.
To make him look like... Because he does look exactly like a guy in... Caleb, I think his name is, the dead brother.
Yeah.
He looks like a guy in the unit.
Yes.
Because he's in a photograph.
Yeah.
But he's not actually him.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
So they stole his face.
Yes.
They took his face off.
I have thought about putting that movie in our programming at some point, but
Me
I know
too.
so many people have talked about Face Off on podcasts. But I don't know. We'll take a crack at it at some point.
Yeah, it'll come up. The next big thing here is the gun deal in the abandoned quarry.
Okay, yeah.
Which
so
is
this
just like,
this is when the movie stops fucking around and
Yeah.
goes insane.
yeah. I mean, I guess if you're buying black market firearms, you do it in the abandoned quarry, but this seems sketchy as fuck.
I mean, like, this is rural New Mexico. I was born and raised in rural Arizona. This tracked to me. I was like, yeah, sure.
Okay. This scene's so fucking funny. I love it so much.
It rocks. Because basically, like, this guy who is Craig's gun guy is there with Craig. And this guy looks just like the most, like, stereotypical, like, white trash dude of all time. He's, like, wearing the, like, wife beater and has the chain and everything. And he like, takes out all these handguns and, like, lays them out. And David, when the gun guy's talking to him, he's basically like, "Oh yeah, like you served in the army. I was in the Navy," and he like knows he's talking to another military guy. So when he's describing the guns, he's basically like, "Oh, you know your way around a Beretta or whatever." And he's like showing off all the guns. And Stevens like takes apart one of them and like puts it back together really quickly and like examines all the components and shit. And then and then he's like, "I'll take them and all of them." And the guy's like, "All the handguns?" Like, "Yeah, sure, if you got the money." And he's like, "No, literally all of your guns." And the guy's like, "Well, fuck yeah, man. Like, hell yeah, I'll even give you a package deal." And he's like, No, I'm going to kill you.
And then he takes the revolver and points it at the gun guy's head. And then Craig delivers this great line. He goes, "Hey, David, what the fuck, man?" And then he shoots Craig in the fucking head.
He blows away the gun guy. He blows away gun guy.
Yeah.
And then
gun guy, and then Craig.
He goes to shoot Craig, and there was only one round in the chamber. So he like rolls his eyes and is like, "Oh fuck!" And he like goes into the ammo box that the guy laid out, and like very patiently and slowly reloads the gun, and is like, "All right," and turns back around and takes a while aiming, and Craig is like fucking like hoofing it across this quarry, like running for his life. And Dan Stevens like takes a while, like gets a beat on him, and then just fucking one shot, like just headshot, kills him from like a quarter mile away, and it rips. It's so good.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that he had to use the same gun because later he plants that gun in Zeke's car to like frame him for these murders. So it's like, it's very funny that he does the whole thing where he's like, "Oh shit, I gotta reload this," and like it takes a while and shit. Like that's all very funny, but it's also like functional because it's like, no, yeah, if he shoots him with different guns, then he has to plant two guns in Zeke's car, and the cops are gonna be like, "Why did he use two different guns to shoot these two dudes?" Right? So it's like, I love, and that's indicative of this movie both like mining a lot of these moments for comedy and also being like pretty like well constructed and thoughtfully constructed as well.
And the movie's never really clear about David's motives, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, totally. I would hate it if we got more explanation than we do. Like, I think that would be to the movie's detriment in a big way.
Because I think just him infiltrating this family's life and setting up all of these little things is just him like setting up little opportunities for himself to gain power, gain some sort of control over them. So it's like, okay, I can kill these two guys that no one's gonna give a shit about, and frame it on Maika Monroe's boyfriend, who, I know she sort of has problems with him.
Right.
So either, it's like a double-edged sword. That gives me an in on potentially hooking up with Maika Monroe, and then also I can, pin these murders that I'm doing on him.
Yeah.
It's just he's got all these little like he's got all these little things set up, and he's just waiting for one of them to like go off.
Yeah. So yeah, then like the next main thing is like Maika Monroe. So he comes home after killing these dudes, and he's like cooking dinner with the family or whatever. And Maika Monroe has heard that, like, she hears that Craig has been killed. And so, like, she's all upset. And then, like, there's, like, some tension. She, like, fights with her parents a little bit about Zeke and stuff. And then she, like, blows up and is like, hey, what about, like, this motherfucker? Because the army has called her back.
Yeah.
And been like, oh, the guy you called about is dead.
Yeah. And her dad has also come home and been like, you know, my boss died.
I'm making a drink, honey.
I'm making a drink. My boss died and now I'm regional manager.
Yes. So yeah, all that shit has happened, and Maika Monroe is like putting the threads together. And so when she's fighting with her parents about Zeke, she's like, yeah, what about this guy? He just fucking wandered in. Now I guess he lives here and we don't know anything about him. And by the way, his identity is a dead man. and cool as a cucumber, also holding a huge knife.
Yeah.
He
like he's Bill making a sandwich at the end of Kill Bill.
Yes.
Like not even being very threatening with it, other than the fact that it's a giant knife.
Just holding it. But he's holding this huge knife, and then he just like takes out these dog tags that like have the dude's name on him, and is like, no, see, I'm who I said I was. They must have fucked something up, right?
Yeah.
And Maika Monroe's like, obviously he's lying. What is wrong with you people? And the parents are both like, go to your room, young lady. How dare you? How dare you be rude to a man who has served our country? Which I love. I love her parents siding with this guy that they know nothing about over her. And the fact that it's all kind of couched in, like, this man's a hero. He like served he served honorably in our nation's armed forces, feels very like pointed in a way that the movie doesn't like explore a lot thematically, because that's not what this type of movie should be doing necessarily. But I feel like it's definitely saying something, you know, where it's like, yeah, like we send our boys overseas and traumatize them with a bunch of violence, and if they come back fundamentally broken, we're just supposed to pretend that they're normal is, I think, a thing that this movie is like sort of saying a little bit, but it's not like this movie has a big message.
Yeah, I think this movie is very cheesy, is over the top, but it is also playing things kind of straight. It doesn't wink at the audience that much.
No, that's one of the things that makes it such an effective, like,
yeah.
Kind of the satire in it is so effective because it is very straight.
But that's one of the things that when I watched it the first time, I sort of struggled with, because I didn't necessarily get that the dad and the mom are supposed to be caricatures, because the mom being this very emotional, overly welcoming person who's like just so broken up about the loss of her son. That read to me as like, I feel like I have met women and mothers who are like that, and I feel like I have met very a lot of older men who are just bitter, functioning alcoholics who
hate college boys taking their promotions
and are very defensive and protective over their daughters and who they date.
Yeah,
like it rung very true to me, even though it is very clearly blown out of proportion a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it walks a good line between like believability and like full on like parody town.
Yeah, yeah. But I think the gun dealing scene in the quarry is where the movie is like, okay, we're not fucking around anymore. We're here to have fun and kill some people.
This is what the movie is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then Anna is talking to her younger brother Luke, right? And is like, hey, like, mom and dad don't believe me, but this guy is not who he says he is. He's trouble. You're a nerd. Use your computer superpowers to, like, figure out what his fucking deal is. And she's like, all I know is he was calling some plastic surgeon in Miami or whatever, right? So then, like, there's the bit where, like, Luke tries to research him a little bit in class or whatever, and then he starts getting bullied, and he fucking stands up for himself and breaks a yardstick across this bully's head, which is great.
Yeah, I like the bully. There's another line delivery that the bully has where after he punches or bullies Luke or whatever, the rest of the class is looking and goes, "That's right, bitches." Also earlier, David and Luke have been getting closer, and David's been really talking to him about bullies and standing up for himself. And he says a line that should be the biggest red flag in the world. The movie just like, we're gonna move on.
Luke sort of plays it. The actor plays it, and I think it's the correct way to play it because it works in the moment. He plays it as like, well, that was a really weird, dark joke, right? Because what he says is insane.
Yeah, it's like, you bring a knife to school, and then you burn down their houses with their families inside.
If anyone bullies you and they just won't stop, fucking commit an act of multiple murder. just burn, raise the earth.
It's so good.
It's insane. It is batshit insane, and I love it. And he delivers it like totally straight.
Yeah,
he's basically, this is what you should do.
Because Dan Stevens is fucking incredible in this movie.
Yeah, he's great.
He's having the time of his life, but he's like, you could tell he's having the time of his life. Mm-hmm. But he's also, again, there's no winks at the camera.
No,
there's nothing. It is a showy performance, but it's not too over the top.
No, he's treating it very seriously.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. But they also bond while carving pumpkins. I don't remember if it's before or after what we've talked about.
Yeah.
But I like the scene where they're carving pumpkins because this is a Halloween movie. And Dan Stevens is like, oh, your parents' knife is like shit. It's not sharp enough. And like puts it to the side and pulls out a butterfly knife and is like, and like flipping it around. And Luke's like, whoa. Just like the coolest thing in the entire world to a 15-year-old boy is a guy doing knife tricks.
He's like, why do you have that? And he was like, I don't know.
You never know. Which, by the way, I'm a guy who carries a knife a lot.
Yep.
I have just a fold out that I carry a lot for the exact same reason. And I was like, hard relate.
Mm-hmm.
Dudes rock.
I did that for a while when I was when I didn't have a car and I was walking home from work every night. Yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, it's less, I might have to use this as a self-defense weapon, and more like, what if I need to cut a block of cheese? What if I need to cut an apple?
There are a lot of blocks of cheeses in your life that need
sometimes
cutting.
When you go hiking, you bring a little bit of cheese, and you can cut it with your knife, and you eat it.
You don't cut it beforehand?
No, that's what the knife's for. Then why am I bringing this knife?
Do you have like a wheel of cheese in your backpack?
No. This was more a thing when I was a kid. My dad used to bring like a block of like Tillamook on a hike.
Oh. I would just cut the cheese and put it in.
Yeah, just cut the cheese.
Cut a cheese and put it in Ziploc with, trail mix or some little like little smokies or whatever.
I don't know. Also, like another thing that I'll use my fold out for is
just taking out a big wheel of Parmigiano Reggiano
is like
on the trail.
But also, what if I go to a concert and they put the little bracelet on me that tells everyone that I was 21, and after I'm done at the concert, I don't want that on my wrist anymore. Like, what am I gonna do? You fucking tug on it?
You rip on it with your hands.
No, I pull out that fold out and I fucking cut that shit off. It's way more efficient. What if you need a knife? What if my car breaks down and I need a knife to fix my car?
Okay.
Man stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. So, Luke gets in trouble for fighting at school because he breaks the yardstick over this bully's head. And this is where we have the scene that we already talked about, where David is basically like, you'll be hearing from our lawyers because this was a hate crime because the bully calls him a slur, a homophobic slur. And Dan Stevens like uses that and weaponizes it against the principal, basically being like, well then this was a hate crime and we'll see you in court. We're going to get this fucking school shut down. And the principal immediately is like, I didn't even know he was gay. Which like Luke isn't gay, but I don't think like this being a joke in the movie is problematic.
He is not textually gay.
He's not textually gay, right? But it is very funny to see this principal fucking sweating and being like, "Oh God, the Anti-Defamation League is gonna have my ass."
They get his punishment down to like a month or whatever, a month of after school detention, rather than expulsion. And then Luke talks to him in the hallway, and is like, "Hey man, my sister's been investigating shit about you, but I know that you killed those guys." and it's totally okay with me, man. I know
Yeah.
that you killed my dad's boss, and it's cool, man.
This
Because we're
is-
friends, man.
Right. This is a moment in this movie where, again, the movie kind of swerved on me here, like we've been talking about. It does, because I was thinking that Luke hadn't put all this shit together, and was fully still pro David because he thought he was like a good guy who was friends with his dead brother. And then the movie's like, no, this kid is smart enough that he knows this guy is not who he says he is, and this guy killed his dad's boss and his sister's friends, and also he's like, by the way, I'm chill about it though.
But he's also dumb enough to say all this to the serial killer's face.
Yes, yeah. This is the moment where fucking Dan Stevens is just like, a switch flips and he's like, I might have to murder this child in this school. and then and then Luke's like, but I'm not gonna tell anybody because like we're cool, right? And Dan Stevens is like, oh yes, absolutely.
It's so fucking funny.
It rocks. It's so good. And then the thing that should be the biggest like indication to this kid that more violence is coming is when Dan Stevens says, hey, by the way, did your sister tell anybody else this little theory of hers?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh yeah, her friend. And he's like, oh, thank you very much. And it's like, motherfucker, that girl's blood is now directly on your
I told you
hands.
Luke sucks.
You're right. Now that I think about it.
He kind of sucks.
Yeah, because he throws this girl under the bus, and he knows he must know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
If he's smart enough to figure out everything else up until this point, it's like, why else would he be asking who else knows about this?
This kid never had a fucking play date in his life. Now the first weirdo that shows up at his house and like pretends to be friends with him, he's like, I trust you completely.
He just really wants to learn those knife tricks.
I guess.
But yeah, so then because Dan Stevens knows what the deal is, right? Where he's like, these people know my secret. We learn from Lance Reddick a little bit later, I think, that basically this has like activated some of his like sleeper agent programming, and now that he knows that people have figured out that he is an undercover like covert ops agent, his programming kicks in to just like eliminate them.
Yeah.
He basically goes Terminator mode and is like, now I have to kill all these people. So he's like at home with the mom, and they're like hanging up the laundry. This is where she's making just the biggest fuck eyes at him. Her dialogue in this scene is all shit like, we're so blessed that you came to us, David. Our lives are so much better because of you. It's like all shit like that. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, it's not a problem at all, ma'am. And he's like, I'll just go get the rest of this. And he like,
I'm
goes
just a nice, normal, down-home Southern boy.
I'm a normal Southern or maybe Midwestern. I'm not quite sure because I'm actually British. But he goes in to get the rest of the laundry, and fucking Lance Reddick and the boys roll up on this farm, and he's wearing that huge leather duster, and he looks fucking awesome.
All of these guys in tactical assault gear,
yeah,
get out of their cars,
with huge guns,
and they go up to the mom, and she's. And Lance is like, we're looking for David Collins or whatever.
And she's like,
David? Has he done something?
He just went inside.
We were doing the laundry. What are all these guns for?
And
oh dear. Yeah.
And so then in a really good and artistic shot where the laundry is flapping on the line, and David is standing behind it, so like as the like sheet is flowing in the wind, you're like getting glimpses of him. He drops the laundry basket and pulls out a gun, and it is immediately a huge shootout, and it rips. It's really really good scene.
We have blood squibs in this movie.
Yes, the squibs in this movie. Thank God for the squibs in this movie.
Yeah, we have bullet like wall squibs for bullet hits.
Yeah.
There's a scene where Lance Reddick and this other guy are just laying waste to the house with automatic machine gun fire, and Dan Stevens is crawling on his army crawling through this hallway, and the walls are just erupting around him in plaster and shit.
So fucking
it's
good.
awesome.
It's a really, really good shootout scene. And ultimately, like he's like kind of taken down these government guys one by one. and they're like laying down all the suppressing fire. Lance Reddick is like, I'm gonna go in, cover for me or whatever. And while this is happening, the mom has also like run inside the house during all this, and David runs into her in the kitchen, and she's like what the fuck, like what is going on? And he's like I love that he keeps apologizing in the third act of this movie. Anytime he sees one of the members of this family, he's like, I'm really so sorry about this. And he does that here. And she's like, did you ever actually know my son? And he says, yes, we were in the same program, and he would understand that I have to do what I'm about to do. And she starts to yell to like give away his position, and he just fucking knifes her. And it rules. It's great.
Yeah.
And then he steals the family Jeep. There's a pristine classic Jeep Cherokee in this movie, by the way, that is prominently featured.
Yeah, that he immediately wrecks a few minutes later.
Yeah, which is the vehicle he steals here. And then he also has shot out all the tires on the fucking Chevy Suburbans that the government guys rolled in on. So then, like, Lance Reddick can't follow him because his tires are blown out.
One other part of the shootout that I really like before we kill the dad in a minute here, is he's hiding under the bed in the bedroom. And at this point, he has like an AR-15 or something that he's gotten from his gun stash. And two guys come into the room, and he shoots one in the ankle, so he falls on the ground, and then shoots him in the head, and then slides out from under the bed and shoots the other guy in the head too.
It rocks.
It's awesome. And then he sees the dad coming home in his little station wagon, literally whistling to himself.
Yeah, and he puts on his seatbelt. And then just full-on head-on collision slams into this dude's car. And then he gets out of the car, and the dad is, like, not dead, but, like, severely injured from the head-on collision. And he just, again, is like, I'm really sorry. And then I think he shoots
him in the chest.
Yeah. And then just, like, walks away. And in the shootout with the government guys, he got shot twice, I think. He's been shot in the leg. And then I also think he got a shot somewhere in, like, the stomach.
Yeah.
So he's, like, not totally unscathed.
But he also has killed everyone except Lance.
Yes.
Right.
Lance Reddick is the only one left alive.
If I've said Lance Henriksen throughout this episode, just know that I fucked up.
I'm a little worried that I've done that as well. Just to be clear, it is Lance Reddick, not Lance Henriksen. I know we've mostly been saying Lance Reddick. I'm also a little worried I said Henriksen.
Yeah, I don't know what his character's name is.
Yes. Major Carver. I looked it up in the credits.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But we can just call him Lance Reddick. Did you ever see his episode of the Eric Andre show?
I've seen clips of it. I don't think I've seen there's an image coming to my mind.
Yes.
But I don't know that I've ever watched the full thing.
I love the moment in that episode where it's like at the end of the interview, and Eric Andre has been doing his typical thing and pissing Lance Reddick off. And Lance Reddick just, like, really abruptly, they go from just, like, having a normal conversation to Lance Reddick stands up and punches a hole in Eric Andre's desk. And Eric Andre, like he's in a rolling chair, and he just, like, wheels way back, like, what the fuck? And Lance Reddick goes, you need a new desk. It's so funny. What a loss. Anyway,
he's coming back for the John Wick ballerina movie.
Oh, well,
he
coming back from the dead?
No, I mean he shot the role before he died, and I wasn't aware of that.
I
was very pleased to see him in the trailer.
Yeah, I'll go see that, if for nothing else than to see Lance Reddick on screen.
Directed by the guy who did Live Free or Die Hard and the Total Recall remake.
That doesn't bode well.
But the trailer looks good.
Yeah.
And it looks like Ana de Armas doing most of the action, which is what I want. So
I haven't seen the trailer yet, but
I hope so. I hope it's good.
I'll see it.
There is an insane needle drop in that trailer that I will not spoil for you.
All right. I'll have to check out the trailer.
It is a classic thing that movies do in these days where we're going to take a dramatic we're going to take a classic pop song and do like a dramatic
Slow
trailer
way
version
down.
of it.
Yeah.
I kind of lost my mind when it happened, and it's sort of awesome.
Cool.
I don't know.
Anyway, so then the next place that David goes is the diner where Anna's friend works.
Because now Micah Monroe and Lance have gotten together and they're on the run,
right?
And they stop at the diner, and she's like, you'll probably be fine. Nothing's gonna happen, and they leave.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, Lance Reddick just like storms in and is like, "You're on the clock? Not anymore. You're fucking coming with me in this Suburban with flat tires." And and so they're gonna go get Luke, the brother, and this is where Lance Reddick explains to Anna. Like all of the shit that we've already talked about, where he's a super soldier, his programming has been activated, his sole mission right now is to just kill everybody who knows his secret, right? And so then when Dan Stevens shows up at the diner, the waitress is already like a little like weirded out because it's like Lance Reddick came in a huge leather trench coat and like stole my friend who was actively working a waitressing shift, and now like Dan Stevens is here with a fucking bloody hole in his leg. And it's the same friend that he slept with at the party, which is and so he they have like a little exchange and then he just shoots her in the chest. And then he takes the 2 grenades that he got from Gun Guy.
He walks off and then turns around and is basically like, "Oh, I almost forgot."
And his face has a look of just like childish glee when he tosses these 2 grenades. It's so fucking fun. He's just like, "Oh, I get to use these." Woohoo!
He blows his fucking diner up.
Yeah. It's not like a fiery explosion.
No.
It's a grenade explosion, so it's like a lot of dust and like cinder block flying and shit. But it's good.
And it's a low budget movie, so they can't necessarily afford to like blow up a whole building, probably.
Right.
But we get some explosion.
Yeah, and then he steals a car and drives to the school because his plan is to go kill Luke. Right. So Luke is in detention with this teacher who has a fucking huge stick up his ass.
Yeah.
Luke is like getting texts from his sister basically being like, "David is coming to murder you," or whatever. And his phone's buzzing. And this teacher running the detention is like, "Mr. Peterson, I said no phones." Like he's like an 80s like Bueller ass teacher.
Well, because he's pissed off because he has to fucking stay after school.
That's true. He's got to work late watching this shitty
one
kid.
One kid in detention setting up the Halloween dance.
Right. Yeah. So he's over.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then fucking Lance Reddick storms in and is like, "We have to get out of here. A killing machine is about to enter this building."
They have a maze set up for Halloween.
Yes.
And he like calls out, the teacher gives him directions, and he's like, "All right, fuck it, I'll just give it a try." And then he gets scared by one of the gags.
Yes.
And then when Micah Monroe's going through it later in the movie, or later in the sequence, running away from Dan Stevens, she also gets scared by the same gag.
Yes. I love when Lance Reddick is like, they show up and in the like lobby of this school building, there's just an entrance to this Halloween maze, and I love Lance Reddick being like, "What the fuck is this shit?" And Maika Monroe being like, "It's the maze for the Halloween dance. They do it every year." He's just like so annoyed at this like fucking high school bullshit that he has to navigate. But then they eventually make it through the maze, and he's like, "We gotta get out of here." He's like, "Is there a back exit?" The teacher's like, "Yeah, but guess what? It's through more maze, and this one's the Hall of Mirrors." So they go to like get out that way, and the teacher like goes around a corner and fucking stumbles back with his throat slit. So we're like, "Oh shit, David has gotten in that way," and so they're all like running away and shit. At some point in here, Lance Reddick gets knifed.
Yeah, he gets knifed in the Hall of Mirrors.
Yeah.
And Maika Monroe and her brother, I don't remember the brother's actor's name. What's the kid's name? Luke. Luke's the kid's name.
Yeah.
They take off. Also, the lights are out at this point, so they're like running in the dark, and there's there's some really cool like black light and neon strobe light thing going on here too.
The lighting in this movie throughout and the cinematography is good. This last set piece in the haunted maze at the high school is like easily the best looking part of the movie, and you know they knew what they had here. They're making great use of the colors. The Halloween 3 masks are on the wall. It fucking rocks. It's great.
And so Luke is still very confused about his best friend David, his new best friend David. And Maika Monroe is like, "Hey, he killed our parents.
Yeah,
we need to run away." And he's like, "What?
No, he didn't.
No way." And I'm like, I want to see this fucking kid die.
Yeah.
But then he finally figures out that.
Yeah.
He finally, wisens up, and
there's a little bit where he's basically Jamie Lee hiding in the closet from Michael Myers. Like he's like hiding in a little thing where there's like a little narrow gap that he can see through, and Dan Stevens is kind of stalking out there. This is where it gets the most horror-y, even though it's never a horror movie. It's like always a thriller.
Yeah.
But there's like some good kind of really tense, suspenseful moments in here. But eventually him and Maika Monroe, they're like navigating the maze. They eventually get to a point where they have like their standoff, and they like fight a little bit. He easily overpowers her and starts strangling her.
Yeah, I think Maika takes. I think there's a point where Dan Stevens walks back through the maze or the Hall of Mirrors and sees that Lance Reddick's gun is missing.
Oh yeah.
And Maika Monroe takes it, and to her credit, immediately shoots Dan Stevens in the shoulder.
Right.
Like when he's like trying to do his whole like villain monologuing thing.
Yeah.
But they tussle for a bit, and then I think both of them stab Dan Stevens, and Luke delivers like the final stab as he's like towering over Maika Monroe.
Right, because he's like strangling her, and Luke comes up behind, and with the butterfly knife that Dan Stevens gave him, when they were like bonding, he stabs him, and then he gets stabbed twice. I think once in the back, and then once like in like the heart. Like, or the lung. He gets stabbed, like, fully in the chest, which is the thing that makes the end of this movie so insane and so great. Because it's like, this man could not survive this. This is a very clearly fatal wound. And I also love that as he's dying, his last lines are so fucking good. He's like, "You did the right thing." He's talking to Luke about stabbing him. He's like, "You did the right thing. I understand. Don't feel bad." And he gives
him a
him
little thumbs up, just like Terminator.
Yes, it's literally Terminator 2.
That's funny that he's like, "I respect you for taking my advice and stabbing me."
Yes, don't feel bad.
And visually, like, this scene takes place in a graveyard set of the Halloween maze, and we see Dan Stevens just lying on the ground, like by these fake headstones
in front of a headstone
mist.
that says R.I.P. on it, which is really funny.
It's funny. I like visually. I think it's a really cool little gag that they have here.
Yeah, it rocks.
It's the end of horror movie.
Right. It's literally like the end of Scream. The fire department's here.
Yeah.
They're in like little trauma blankets on the back of an ambulance or whatever. The firefighters are going in because a fire has the building has been caught on fire. At some point during the whole scuffle, something gets knocked over onto a hay bale. And it ignites.
It's starting to go up in the towards the end of their fight.
And so they say they found 2 bodies, which there should be 3 because there should be the teacher, Lance Reddick, and Dan Stevens in there. But the firefighters are like, "We found 2 bodies and their teeth are missing," which is an insane thing. And then like the firefighters are all like walking in and out of the school building, and we see one of the firefighters has a limp, and he turns and you can see through the firefighter helmet, and it is Dan Stevens.
Yeah, he's got a mask on.
Yes.
Yeah. And Maika Monroe looks at him and she goes, "What the fuck?" And then the movie cuts to black.
End of movie. It's a great ending.
Yeah.
And also, in my head, I was just like, I know you haven't seen Halloween Kills, but in my head, I was like, literally the only thing that could possibly happen after that what the fuck is David kills everyone. I imagine that he can't override his programming to kill Luke and Anna, who are right there. So he must then have to kill both of them and all of these firefighters. Just like Michael Myers in Halloween Kills, where the beginning of that movie is basically Michael Myers versus the entire Haddonfield Fire Department. It's the only good part of that movie. That movie sucks, but him killing all those firefighters rocks.
I'm probably gonna watch those the David Gordon Green movies this Halloween.
Yeah, the first one's good. The second one blows. The third one,
Yeah. You're the only person I've heard who has a mixed opinion on the third one. Everyone is like very firmly on one side of the fence of that movie or the other. Everyone's like
on it.
Everyone's like, that movie's fucking terrible and it sucks shit. What the hell were they doing? And then other people are like, no, it's actually really good and pretty great that they did that.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I'm sort of in the middle. I'm kind of like, I think some of the stuff they did is good and works, and some of it is poo-poo dog shit.
But Justice.
Yes.
That's The Guest, directed by Adam Wingard.
Yes.
It is your turn to answer this week.
Yeah.
So is The Guest poo-poo dog shit? Or is it the greatest movie ever made?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. It's definitely not poo-poo dog shit. I really enjoyed this movie. As to whether it's the greatest movie ever made or not, I'm going to be fully candid with you. I knew my verdict going in. Then we talked about this movie, and I'm like, I changed my mind. Because I was going to say no, because I was like, I don't know, like, it's a very fun, well-constructed thriller that has some satirical elements. It's like very goofy and silly, but also plays it like pretty straight and has a few like really good just like action set pieces. I don't think it's like too silly or winky ever. I think it is walking a good tightrope between kind of its two modes. And I just had such a fun time watching this movie, and it's like, it's not saying anything big. Its purpose is kind of just to entertain you, but I think it excelled at its job, and it was extremely entertaining. And like, I kind of think that my verdict is like a soft yes now after our conversation on it, because I think talking about it with you made me realize how much I liked it. Because as I was talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, that did rock, and that was really funny and shit. So like, yeah, I'll give a soft yes to this one. David, is The Guest the greatest movie ever made?
I'm really glad that you enjoyed it so much.
Yeah.
I think this is definitely a movie that works better on the second viewing. Because I think first time going into it with no expectations for me was like, I got to the end of it and I still wasn't really sure what I had just watched. And going into it this time, I had a lot more fun with it. And I think it is just a great combination of genres and influences that ends up being something fun and unique and, kind of special in its own little way. And much like a film we talked about last Halloween, like Trick or Treat, it is also a little glimpse into that alternate universe where Halloween 3 Season of the Witch caused the Halloween series to become an anthology.
Yeah.
So I do love it on that level too. That being said, I think it runs a little long. And I think it plays its cards close to the chest for maybe a hair too long for me. And I really wish it like went full bore in the second half. I really wish it went like pedal to the metal. And there is really great action and great squibs and fun moments in the second half, but I kind of want that scene where he kills everyone in the fire department. I kind of want it to just go all out. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna give it a soft no.
Okay.
I think we're kind of like right on a knife's edge with this in terms of verdicts.
Yeah, that's also fun because you mentioned Trick or Treat. When we did Trick or Treat last Horrorthon, I had seen that movie, you hadn't, and I gave it a no and you gave it a yes.
Yeah.
So we're now inverting that with a movie that feels spiritually similar in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I enjoyed the shit out of it. I was really happy to come back to it, and I'm glad that I liked it more, but not quite the greatest movie ever made as we have defined it on the show. But I'm glad that you felt differently. And also, I'm glad that we had a really good conversation about it. Yeah, at least I think so. Do you think so, listener? Let us know. Leave us a review or comment on our Twitter or interact with us in some way.
Mostly leave us a review. That's the important thing. It's
good
for the podcast's growth.
We have one like 1-star review on Apple Podcasts by some dickhead that just had like gross. I looked up their username.
Gross.
They left a review of another podcast. I don't even remember what it was. They have 2 reviews, and that review is also a 1-star review that says gross.
Gross.
So fuck that guy. Don't be that guy.
Yeah.
But
Maybe
yes,
that person just doesn't like podcasts. Maybe they just think podcasts are gross.
I don't know.
Ours is one of 2 they've listened to. And
I guess.
These are gross. Fucking absorbing content with only my ears. Disgusting. Repulsive.
That's the show.
Yeah.
Next week, the Horrorthon continues.
That's right.
With we're going to be joined
Speaking
by
of the guest,
yeah,
we got a guest next
Yeah.
week.
Tony.
Hopefully Tony Machete doesn't fucking kill us though.
I guess so.
Doesn't blow us up with 2 grenades.
I wouldn't put it past him, and I would also be okay with it.
Yeah.
If I had to die,
Tony Machete can kill me with a grenade.
I would be happy to die at Tony's hands. Yeah, Tony's coming back. He's our first returning guest, and we're going to talk about the Monster Squad.
I've never seen this movie.
But we're going to find out all about Wolfman and his nards.
Yes.
And I'm gonna return to this movie. I think I watched this probably around this time last year too. So join us for that. In the meantime, tell your friends about the show and all that shit. We love you so much. Have a great start to the Halloween season. And as always, later dip shits.
It's almost time, kids. The clock is ticking. Be in front of your TV sets for the Horrorthon.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Greatest Movie Ever Made. Please remember to leave us a rating and a review, and to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. We appreciate you supporting the show and spreading the word. Tell your friends to listen, tell your enemies to listen, tell your mom to listen. If your neighbor has an unsecured Bluetooth speaker, connect to it and play an episode. You can follow us on social media at TGMEM_podcast, and if you've got a movie that you want us to talk about, send us an email at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com. Okay, that's all for now. We hope you beautiful people all come back next week for another episode.